Hello and welcome to the Journal. I'm Steve Kendall. Spring is here, summer's just around the corner. Of course, one of the things that means is it's time for road construction season in Ohio. Here to talk about that, but also some of the other aspects that the Ohio Department of Transportation deals with, the challenges, are Rebecca Dangelo, the public information for ODOT District 2, and also Pat McColley from ODOT 2. He's the deputy director. And Pat, let's talk a little about the fact that one of the main things that ODOT is really concerned about, besides building good roads and maintaining them, is the fact that safety is the paramount driver for what the Department of Transportation does.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. This is safety is behind every decision we make, and really, when we build roads, we are trying to make safer conditions. So a lot of people might be scratching their heads and wondering, why are you doing this or why are you doing that? Safety plays a factor in every decision we make, and that really leads to, there's only so much we can do with the roadway system as well to make a safer roadway system. Some of it also is on driver habits and how people are driving out there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know one of the things that everybody's concerned about, and I know that it's become very important, is the fact that it seems that even though there are fewer people on the roads over the past year because of COVID and all the other things that were going on, distracted driving still seems to be the major issue when it comes to people being safe on the roadways. And as you said, you can design the roads the best you can and implement them the best you can, but if people aren't paying attention, that makes it difficult for things to function properly. So talk a little bit about distracted driving and what the efforts are from ODOT's perspective to help with that.
Yeah, I mean, those are some great points. Actually, last year, traffic was down overall for the whole entire year, and we were only in this pandemic, was shut down and the pandemic, stay-at-home orders, and as well as people working from home. We weren't doing that the whole year, but last year traffic was down 15%. So overall traffic was down 15%. Actually, truck traffic was up. Passenger vehicles were down even more than that. But we actually have seen an increase in fatality year over year going into 20, but specifically in 2020, fatalities actually went up 7% compared to 2019. So intuitively, you would almost think, well, you guys have 15% less traffic on the road, you should also have less fatalities.
Sure.
That's actually has not been the case. It's actually been, fatalities have gone up. And actually, I think it was either June or July was one of the highest fatality months that we've seen in a decade. So that's very concerning to us. Should be concerning to everyone. And that's really, that's really a driver towards what we're doing in the statistics we're looking at. But even bigger than just last year, fatalities have continued to rise, and that's really why we need to start improving and curbing driver habits. One of those initiatives is Hands-Free Ohio. There will be a bill introduced probably within the next month or so to the General Assembly to make a primary offense to drive distracted. It's essentially, using your phone, watching videos. I've seen people reading newspapers while they're driving, watching TV while they're driving. Those type of activities are extremely dangerous, and they're really putting other people's lives on the road in danger, and that needs to stop. So it would make it a primary offense, and we wouldn't be the first state to do this. There's actually a number of other states.
Yeah, and you make a good point, because it seems as if the easier we make it for people to drive, you design the roads to make traffic flow properly and merge properly and all of that, but it seems as if almost, as you said, volume's down, fatalities are up. The more you improve the roads, I guess the more relaxed people get about how they use them maybe. And I know statistically that's probably something for other people to dive into, but it does seem that more and more, because everybody's got anecdotal, information. They're out driving, they go, wow, you can't believe what I saw today. And so some of that is actually proving out statistically, basically what you're saying, and we've got to figure out a way to do something with that. So maybe the hands-free thing is at least a start to that, to make people more serious about that.
Yeah, with that hands-free initiative, like Pat said, Ohio's not the first state to try and look at this. So we actually looked at what other states that have similar laws like how they're faring, what they've seen. And 12 out of 15 states and the District of Columbia has this as well. They experienced a decrease in the fatalities within 2 years. So, 12 out of 15, that's a pretty significant stat.
Sure.
And then 6 of those states in DC saw a decrease of more than 20% in their fatalities. So, when we talk about these stats, these numbers kind of don't really mean too much to us. But when you think about that fatality, that's a human life. Those are huge. Seeing a 20% decrease in fatality rates, that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's a significant improvement. And you're right. I guess it's one of those things that when we get in our cars, and especially now because we can't do anything without a phone in our hands anymore, that just getting in your car, to some people just seems normal to grab their phone and start doing things. And the reality is that's not what you should be doing in a car. You should be paying attention to what's going on around you. And so you need to move in these directions to make people understand the seriousness of what they're doing when they pick up their phone while driving or look at it or do whatever. And it's not just them, as you said, it's not just them it's not themselves they're putting in danger, they're putting everybody else around them in danger as well. So it's a step that has to be taken. As you said, we're not the first, and it's something that just has to be done.
And I would also add to it, Steve, is when we look at other fatalities, like specific users, pedestrian fatalities in 2020 compared to 19 were up 29%.
Wow.
Intersection fatalities were up 33%. Motorcycle fatalities were up 23%. So what that tells me is, our most vulnerable users on our roadway system are generally pedestrians, people driving bicycles, people walking, might be crossing through a crosswalk, running alongside a road. Motorcycles are also a vulnerable user of a roadway system. They're less likely to survive a crash if they get into it. And then the intersections are where you need to pay attention, actually, as well as the motorcycle and pedestrians. Those are all situations people need to pay attention. They need to put the phone down and get their eyes up and pay attention. And that it just doesn't seem like it was happening in 2020. And the statistics show that we've had an increase in all of those areas, even greater than the overall increase in the state. So that's very concerning too, with our pedestrians and everything else. So are people not paying as much attention anymore? There's less traffic on the road, so we can't say that there's more traffic on the road causing them. Yeah. It makes you wonder.
Yeah, and it's a good point because, as you said earlier, fewer people on the road should mean fewer accidents, fewer fatalities, fewer incidents, and yet the opposite seems to have happened. And it has to come back to the fact that possibly because there isn't a lot of traffic, people are even less interested in paying attention to what they're doing because there isn't anything around them. And I guess that's, again, seems backwards, but that seems to be the case. And I know I'm a bicycle rider, and I don't like to go out on the streets or roads. I ride the trails because you just know that not everybody sees you, even though you might have every flasher on, you're doing everything right. A lot of times you can tell drivers don't know you're there, and it doesn't matter whether it's a truck, a car, a motorcycle, whatever. You're invisible out there because you're moving at a different speed, and you're not big and you're not large and that sort of stuff. So it does point back to what you guys have both said, that people just aren't as aware for whatever reason, whether it's distracted driving or whatever, about what's going on around them. So it's something that we're trying to get our arms around, obviously. So. Yeah, when we come back, let's talk about, and I know that you mentioned roundabouts and some of that and some of the other safety things that we're trying to build in. So when we come back, let's talk more about that. We'll be back on The Journal in just a moment here on WBGU-PBS. Thanks for staying with us here on The Journal. Our guests are Pat McColley, the Deputy Director of Ohio Department of Transportation District 2, and the Public Information Officer from that office, Rebecca Dangelo. We talked a lot about safety in that first segment, and we talked a little bit about road design. And as you said when we opened up the program, Pat, that safety is always the primary objective when it comes to designing new roads, new intersections, that sort of thing. Talk about the fact that obviously new to this area significantly, at least over the past few years, are things like roundabouts and divergent diamonds and some of these things that are going in now that people are adapting to. And so talk about the science behind those. It isn't just a whim that somebody said, hey, that would look cool to put a roundabout in there. Talk about why those are effective and why they're a significant safety improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. You are seeing a lot more of them out there, and we're putting them in counties that haven't seen them before. I will say that, usually when we put them in an area that they don't have one within 20 or 30 miles of there, people, they might not be the most accepting of the roundabout when it originally goes in, but there is good reason, and there's good data that supports those decisions. I did want to talk about a little bit about our safety program too, which is a big reason why we're putting a lot of them in. Our safety program Governor DeWine has put 50% more funding in the safety program. He is very safety on our highways is one of the most important things to him and his administration, partly due to he lost his daughter in a car accident, and that was a tragedy that really shaped his life, but it's also that also carries with him to today and his priorities in his administration. So with that being said, like you said, there's a lot of roundabouts going in. So people are asking, why put them in, or will they handle the traffic, or people don't like them out here, whatever the reasons are. The reasons we put them in is because they're safer. They're more efficient in many cases, and quite frankly, sometimes they're a lot of times more cheaper than a light, and some people might not realize that. Or they might not believe it. Yeah, sometimes we got to sit down with people and say, hey, these are the expense of a light. But really, the slower speed. So when you're approaching a roundabout, you have to slow down. It's not like, hey, I got a green light, I can go 40 miles an hour, 45 or 50. Everybody's slowing down to get into that roundabout and to make it through that intersection, whichever way they're going. There's fewer conflict points, what we call it. So a conflict point is a point where an accident can happen or a crash can happen. There's 8 of those compared to 32 with a typical intersection. So that makes it safer. So you kind of wonder, we talked about fatalities a lot in the last segment. So what does, and intersections, what the fatality rate has been in intersections in 2020. So a roundabout is actually 90% more efficient there's a 90% reduction in fatalities in a roundabout compared to a typical intersection.
Okay.
So you wonder, getting back to the safety element, like, okay, let's say we're having some fatalities and serious injuries and crashes at an intersection, and we look at it like, what's some things we could do? Yeah, you could put a traffic light there, maybe put another stop sign there, whatever the case is. But really, one of the most effective things to reduce fatalities and serious crashes at that intersection is to put a roundabout in, and it's about 82% more effective or reduction in serious crashes, and it's around 30-something% as far as crashes overall. So again, like, yeah, you might be reducing 30% of the crashes, but you're reducing 78% of the serious injury crashes and 90% of the fatality crashes. Yeah. So that's really the safety data behind it. And again, oftentimes they're more efficient. I can tell you from, and Steve, you're in BG as well, and our district headquarters in BG, when we put in the double roundabout interchange at Worcester, that has never flowed better. And it used to be a traffic light. And I used to have to go to Columbus. I still do go to Columbus, but I would be backed up trying to get on 75 South at that light. I can tell you, I think maybe I've ever had to wait for maybe 1, maybe 2 vehicles in front of me ever since that double roundabout interchange went in. So there's not any data behind what I'm just said right there, but I can tell you from my personal experience, it has been much more efficient as well.
Sure.
And like you said, there's we can use these in a variety of different places. So, some of our rural counties are starting to get roundabouts, and we understand, it's kind of intimidating when it's something new. So we just want to remind people, it's pretty simple. If you've ever driven in a cul-de-sac and you're trying to get to your friend's house, it's kind of the same concept. You're going to slow down going into the circle. You're going to look to your left. If there's nobody coming, then you can just proceed. You don't have to stop. If there is somebody, obviously, please do stop. But then you go around the circle until you get to your exit, and then you just continue on your way. So it keeps you going. But like Pat said, the reduction in crashes, the reductions in fatalities and severe crashes is incredible. I mean, we put some roundabouts, last year, we put 3 roundabouts along US 20A. There's already a 4th one out there. And those were to really help. 20A is kind of long straight shot, so people were flying down it. And then, you know, if you're on the crossroads trying to make that cross, it was pretty sketchy. We saw a lot of bad crashes out there, you know, high speed T-bone crashes, and those fatalities, have that high severity. But when you're in that roundabout, like Pat said, you're forced to go slower. There's fewer conflict points. And even if you do get in a crash, your angle is now like this instead of being, you know, side T-boned right into either to the driver or the passenger side. So even, you know, we can't stop all the crashes, but we're definitely improving the safety with the roundabouts.
Yeah, and common sense would tell you that slower speeds and 90-degree angles are a lot, you know, the slower speeds and not having those points of conflict where people are literally crossing, you know, in front of each other would tend to make things safer. It's just that at first people were a little, you know, they didn't quite know how those things worked. And I know that now a lot of them have signs as you approach them that say, you know, roundabout ahead, flashing lights, arrows to make sure people turn the correct way when they get to them, because I know occasionally people would go left and kind of go clockwise through it instead of following the counterclockwise flow. But it's all a learning curve, but in the end, obviously a lot safer because people are going to be going slower and you aren't getting those 90-degree angles, those T crashes, as you said, that are usually pretty deadly to everybody involved. So yeah, and the same thing too now, you talk about the divergent diamonds and some of those other things as well. How have people adapted to those? Because again, we're so used to typical intersections. Those are a little more complex, but they do flow traffic a lot better. I guess that's part of the goal too.
Yeah, I was pretty new as a public information officer when we were building the Diverging Diamond in Perrysburg.
Right.
There along State Route 25. So I remember trying to explain to people what this would look like. And it is scary. You know, you're telling people they're going to drive on the opposite side of the road and they're like, how is this going to happen? People are concerned there's going to be wrong way entrances onto the interstate because you're on the opposite side of the road. There's just a lot of confusion anytime there's something new. So with the Diverging Diamonds, you know, we talked about the conflict points with roundabouts. We're seeing the same thing with the Diverging Diamonds. We're going from 32 conflict points in a typical intersection to 14. So again, you know, anytime we can reduce the number of conflict points is a huge win. And it also, you know, despite how it may sound in your head when you're explaining it, entering the wrong way to go onto the interstate is actually extremely difficult with the way that a DDI is designed.
Right.
It is designed for that, you know, follow the road, follow the signage, and there's lane markings, and it'll be very difficult.
Yeah.
And then also like pedestrians, like on 25 is the perfect example. They can easily use that. We can accommodate the bicyclists, the pedestrians trying to get across, and they have shorter crossings. So it really is a very beneficial multimodal kind of design when we're looking at improving interchanges.
Yeah. And when we come back, I know that we have some of the first ones that went into the state, whether they were not necessarily roundabouts, but the Diverging Diamonds and some of the other things that you have in the works for some of the other major intersections, especially along the 475 corridor. So let's talk about what you have in the works for that and how those are going to improve traffic flow in those areas as well. Back in just a moment with Pat McColley, Deputy Director of ODOT 2, and the Public Information Officer from ODOT 2, Rebecca Dangelo. Back on the Journal in just a moment. You're with us here on the Journal. Our guests are Pat McColley, the Deputy Director of Ohio Department of Transportation, District 2, located in Bowling Green, and the Public Information Officer from that office, Rebecca Dangelo. In the earlier segment, we talked about these newer designs, roundabouts, the DVIs, Diverging Diamonds, all those sort of things. Obviously, we're going to see more of those, and I know that in the works you have several projects. One of them's underway at Dorr Street right now along the 475 US 23 corridor. But talk about some of the things that people are going to see, some of the projects like that, and what the expectations are of those in terms of safety and traffic flow improvement, things of that nature.
Yeah, Steve, so the Dorr Street project, as you mentioned, is currently ongoing. It will be a double roundabout interchange, so similar to the one in Bowling Green there on Wooster Street. And it's a new interchange. It's going to be one of the gateways to the University of Toledo. That was actually the longest stretch without an interchange. So between when you look at between airport and Central, that was the longest stretch in the 475-75 loop without an interchange. So that interchange will be going in. It should be operational, or will be operational, I should say, by the time the Solheim Cup comes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's coming. It's getting close. That is part of a bigger project, though, which is widening of 475, the continuation of widening 475, and that'll be from airport to Central. Our next big project, which kind of gets into what we were talking about before with DDIs, is going to also be widening 475 from US 24 to airport.
Oh, okay, good.
So now now you'll have, there'll be plenty of orange barrels, I'm sorry to say, but once those orange barrels go away, just like 75 is now going to Findlay, it is it reduces congestion and makes it a very nice drive, and we operate more efficiently, and this area being such a logistics hotbed, that's very critical. But so again, 2022, we're going to bid out the widening of 475 from 24 to airport, and that'll include a 20A interchange by Dana Corporation. There's not an interchange there now. That interchange will be another diverging diamond interchange, or we call it DDI interchange, similar to the one on State Route 25 in Perrysburg. So we'll be putting another DDI in. The one in Perrysburg was the second one in the state. So I think there have been a few others. I will say, kind of similar to what Rebecca said, when we talk about DDIs in the public and roundabouts in the public, especially DDIs, like, I think people got used to it. I mean, people are, everybody I've talked to loves the one in Perrysburg, but when they're putting DDIs in other areas of the state, they're experiencing some of those same issues that people. They told me ever since driver's ed, I had to drive on the right side of the road. Now you're telling me I got to drive on the left side of the road? Yes, that's what we're telling you. So
it's a little disconcerting at first, because you're right. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm on the wrong side of the road. No, you're okay. But at first it's tricky. Yeah, at first you feel uncomfortable, but yeah, like anything else, you get familiar with it. So yeah, okay.
And in addition to the I-475 project with Dorr Street, which, like Pat said, adding an interchange is kind of unheard of. So that's super awesome that we have that project going. We also have our mega project on I-75, and there's a lot of safety components with that. It's primarily a widening and reconstructing, but we are redoing those interchanges with the Anthony Wayne Trail. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with that, but that you used to enter from the left side, merging from the left, and we've updated that, obviously to improve safety. Now people will be entering from the right side. So there's a lot of cool things happening in the greater Toledo area with these projects that obviously also are improving the safety.
Now, and let me ask you a question, because I know, Pat, you touched about the fact that we're going to add a third lane from US 24 up to Airport Highway. When you guys set up a project to begin with, this is diverting a little bit or diverging from what we were talking about, why wasn't that always 3 lanes through there to begin with? Was there a reason why it wasn't built? Was that a traffic volume decision? I mean, because anyone could look at that road 20 years ago and say, this should have been 3 lanes in 2000, not in 2020. I mean, so what goes into that? We've just got a couple of minutes, but try to explain why certain projects aren't full expanded like that, why that wasn't designed as a 3-lane highway from the get-go.
Yeah, absolutely. You design roads to meet the capacity in the future, but also today. So when the interstate highway system was built in the 50s and 60s, they weren't going to add more than what they needed at that time.
Got it. Okay.
So it would be very cost prohibitive, but it would also mean other projects aren't getting done across the nation and across the state. And now you got extra pavement that you got to maintain as well.
Right.
So now with traffic volumes, except for last year, but they've continued to, for the most part, go up. That puts a bigger burden on the system. And I will say, like with the greater Toledo area, they were ranked #1 for Site Selection magazine as far as like places where companies are going. A lot of them are logistics companies. So this area is a logistics hotbed as well. And part of that is because of the good interstate system, but also the Class 1 rail lines. The Gordie Howe Bridge going in is going to make it even more important once that's done and going to Canada. And then we got a great seaport here in this area as well. So there's just a lot of reasons why you see more and more traffic volumes and crashes related to that actually dictate that, hey, now's the time. But it takes years, if not decades. I mean, they were talking about the 28 interchange in the 90s.
Right.
They were talking about the Door Street interchange has been talked about for a couple decades, probably a decade or more. These are major funding decisions. They take a lot of time with design, but they also take a lot of time to get that funding. So they take a long time to get through the environmental process, just a lot of time. But once they're finally done, that sets this area up for success in the years and decades to come.
Yeah, and as you said, and we're going to have to kind of leave it right there, plus the fact that it improves the safety for everyone who's using any of those highways or streets or roads or passing through those interchanges or intersections or whatever, that in the end, that's also the benefit too, that it makes it just safer for people to drive, with the assumption that they're paying enough attention to take advantage of all those improvements. So I want to thank both of you for being on to talk about this, and we'll have you back on in the future as these things progress, and you can update us on how volume hopefully this year is going to increase because we're getting back to normal, that sort of thing. But thanks again to Pat McColley and Rebecca Dangelo from ODOT too. I appreciate you guys coming on to talk about how it looks from your perspective versus how sometimes we look at it from a driving perspective, and how this all works, how this all comes together. So appreciate you taking the time with us today to do that. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you can check us out each week at WBGU.org, and of course you can watch us each week on WBGU PBS. We'll see you again next time on The Journal.